Sunday morning and welcome to a special edition of Inside Tennessee. After a historic vote by Congress on a massive spending bill by President Trump, we are hearing from East Tennessee Representative Tim Burchett. He represents almost 800,000 people in the 2nd District. Here is my colleague Robin Wilhoit with her sit-down interview with the congressman.
Congressman, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know you're coming off some interesting times in Washington, D.C. up to this point, to say the least, in this legislative session. Let's unpack it. If you can, just generally, as you're looking back up to this point, how do you assess it?
Just it's kind of a Forrest Gump type situation. Every year there's new challenges. I mean, January 6th during the riots, COVID, the shutdown, and all the craziness of Washington, the almost daily threats I get, security issues, meetings in the Oval Office with the president and the vice president. It's a lot of times it's kind of surreal, really, because I grew up here in Knoxville, and every time I leave, I'm very, very humbled just by the experience of where I'm at, and I realize where I'm at, and I realize, honestly, the people that I represent are right here, and I'm just incredibly humbled. I always think I'm that kid from West Hills who was the last one to get picked for kickball, and now I'm literally having a conversation with the most powerful people in the world, and they call me and they know my name.
Let's talk about some of these meetings that you've had, especially leading up to the vote on the president's spending bill, a 900-page bill, I might add. Did you read the entire bill? No,
there's no way. And it would change periodically. And what changes a lot of times is the definition and the interpretation. I remembered under Biden, I had a 2,000-page bill one time dropped on us, and that was just a few hours before the thing. What we try to do, though, is I serve on 3 committees. Everybody serves on one. Some people serve on 2, but I actually serve on 3 major committees. And they're all of areas that have a lot of interest in this area: transportation, I-40, I-75, our airports, our trains, our barge traffic that runs up and down the Tennessee River. It's just every committee is just from the international, from aspects of trade and things, commerce to our country, to oversight, which deals with just about everything, oversight of the entire government. So I have people that are assigned staff members that go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and we meet with people daily trying to figure out what's in it. And too, that's by design, really. I've fought since I've been there, to have single-issue spending bills like we do in Nashville. That's why we have a balanced budget in Nashville. But they don't want that. Nobody wants that, honestly, because when they do that, and I've said, they come to the old-timers, they'll say, well, Burchett would be here all night. I said, well, dadgummit, we paid a heck of a lot of money. We ought to stay here all night and go through this. But the reality is the machine, the swamp, I call it a sewer, does not want that.
Well, let's talk about this bill, the passage of this budget. Needless to say, a lot of people celebrate it. A lot of people are disappointed by it and even upset by the passage of it. You have a long established record of voting against bills that raise the national debt. This raises the national debt by $4 trillion.
Right.
Why did you vote against what you have stood for so long?
Let's put that in context. Every 100 days under the Biden administration, our debt went up $1 trillion. We went up $12 trillion in 4 years. And we're talking about over 10 years, it's going to raise the debt $3 to $4 trillion. And the CBO did not take into consideration economic growth, which we'll see a huge amount of. All of the components dealing with energy will, I think, put us in the stratosphere. We'll stop having to go overseas for our oil. We will, again, export energy, which we did under the previous Trump administration. And I think the economy is going to boom. Yeah, I don't like the spending. I didn't like the spending, the increases in defense. I talked to Pete Hegseth, and I talked to the president, and I talked to the vice president about that. I'm concerned about hypersonics. I'm concerned about drone technology. I'm concerned that we're spending money on flat tops, or they're called old days flat tops, aircraft carriers. You can put a $3,000 drone in the air and take out $500 billion worth of apparatus on the deck of one of those things, and we're continuing to make them. And those are concerns I have. But the overall was that, first of all, Tennesseans would pay, say, a family of four, making $70,000 a year. Some of them, they'd pay $1,500 to $2,000 more dollars a year in tax if we did not pass the bill.
But some people would argue, though, this is hypocritical.
Well, they could, but they're not taking into consideration the CBO is a very partisan organization. So I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, actually.
So to that point, the CBO, you relied on them just last year when it came. You wanted them to have the House Clerk Reed allow the CBO score before the bill was presented, and as a form of transparency.
Fiscal
what
note.
has changed
Nothing
since then to now?
Nothing has, other than the fact that I've now learned that 85% of the people that work in the healthcare division of the CBO, they contribute to Democrat candidates and are registered Democrats. And what happens in Washington, D.C., as you know, is that these agencies just become dumping grounds for the political parties, and that's what the CBO has become. And the CBO actually fought me on that, and I wanted them just to do their dadgum job. Because in Nashville, that's what you have. You have a fiscal note that follows the bill. Mm-hmm. And yet, again, they wouldn't allow me to do that. And so if they're not going to do their job, or if they're going to fight us on making them do their job, I think we need to find another agency.
But once again, you did lean on them in the past, and you said nothing
but they didn't
has really changed.
But they didn't do it. That's the problem. I leaned on them, but they didn't do it. And that is a huge problem that we've had with the CBO, I think. I think it's a partisan agency. Again, when it benefits us, we use it. When it doesn't benefit it, we don't. And I just don't see that as, when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar agency, that I would say if you walk down the street of Knoxville, down Broadway out here, and asked 100 people what the CBO was, they would think it was a country music band.
It's one of those things that I think most Americans are not
I think it's
familiar
outdated.
with.
I think it's a dinosaur, really.
On July 2nd, as you were preparing to vote, you were on your way to the White House, and we follow your tweets, and you said you quipped about going to the White House or behind the woodshed. Which one did you go to?
I went to the White House, actually. You know, I've always, you hear how Trump's going to be, and frankly, J.D. Vance, you hear a lot of talk in the media of how they cuss people out and raise their voices. And, you know, every time I've gone into the White House, they treated me with respect. They've called me by my name. They haven't degraded me. This past time, there was 14 of us, and we're in the Roosevelt room. I was sitting beside Byron Donalds, and the president walked in and spoke to Byron, spoke to me, and called me by my name and said some things that we had talked about in the past and some other things. It was kind of humorous, really. And then 14 members of Congress literally peppered him with questions for almost 2 hours.
You asked questions. What answers did you get then? Because you said you were seeking comfort. Obviously, you must have gotten some comfort to actually vote for the bill, despite your long-held beliefs.
Yeah, since the CBO did not give us any numbers on what the economic impact of these reforms would be, I asked him, and other people asked things about energy credits. They asked about, there was questions about abortion, there was questions about the military, there was questions about the attacks on Iran and what was going on in the future. And honestly, the interesting thing about Trump is always made a lot about his ego, and there's no question he's got an incredible ego, there's no question. But when you ask him a question, he would answer the question, and then if he didn't know the answer, he had the expert in the room, and he would point it out. And a couple of times, even J.D. or Vice President Vance would chime in, and it was an unusual situation because you know as well as I do, you've interviewed a lot of people, and a lot of people with huge egos, and they'll tell you an answer, even if they don't know the answer. It's very rarely for somebody to say, "I don't know." But Trump would say that in the meeting, I don't know, and he would point to the person who did, and then they would answer it.
Do you think, when you said concerned about I might be going to the woodshed, was he assuming you were not going to vote for it?
Yeah.
And therefore put pressure
that's why
on
I
you?
was
So
there.
did you bow to his pressure?
No, I didn't bow to his pressure. I actually, he answered my questions. It was not even anything of that. In the history of this country, there's only been 2 speakers that have been removed from the speaker, and I was one of those people that removed a former speaker, one of those 5 or 6, I can't remember the numbers. And you're talking about pressure. I mean, I'm talking about national leaders calling you. People in this district that are friends of yours of mine that threatened me. I'd call, text in the middle of the night, cussing me out, and they'll never support me again. But I thought it was the right thing to do. That's pressure.
I mean, if you look at polls, and there are a lot of polls done on this, it appears, based on the ones that I looked at, including Pew and Fox, the vast majority of Americans did not support this, don't support this. Did you talk to your constituents? Did you hear from your constituents prior to casting your vote?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did they say?
And well, you have to look how they asked the question and who their polling data was. I can remember we had a poll one time that people favored a state income tax, and we found out the questions were called at people's houses at 11:30 in the morning, and who the heck was at home at 11:30 in the morning, but people that weren't working, that don't pay taxes. So a lot of these Pew and the rest of them, I don't read pollsters much, because I get it from the constituency, and overwhelmingly people have supported it. I was in the Farragut parade, and that's a parade that people come in from all over the area. And that was the number one thing, and not one single negative. And I think because they realize that they're being lied to. They're being lied to about Medicaid and Medicare, and food stamps, and they know that in this bill, they're not kicking off a single mom with 2 kids. They're kicking off the people that are gaming the system, and the illegals, waste, abuse, and fraud, and that's what it does.
I want to dig into
Sure.
that a little more. So, but first, we conducted a survey here at the station. I want to run over just some of our findings from that. We asked overall, what are your views, your impression of the president's bill? We asked for their political affiliation first. 24% identified as Republican, 25% as Democrat, 35% as Independent. Of the more than 1,300 people, which was pretty significant for our polls,
Sure.
responded, 67% say they view it as very negative, 22% view it as very positive, 69% said it will impact their families very or somewhat negatively, 26% it will impact their families very or somewhat positively. What would you say to the majority of the people who are saying, no, this is not going to help me?
I think that they've been misled on a lot of the issues. I think you're going to see that basically, if they're succeeding now, they'll continue to succeed. And if they feel they need more government involvement in life, then maybe this isn't going to help them. But again, if you're able to work, if you go back to those same people and ask them, if you're able to work and you don't have a disability or an illness, should you be on food stamps? Should you be receiving assistance? And I'll guarantee you that the vast majority of those Democrats and Republicans say, well, heck no, they need to work. And this bill, 20 hours a week or 20 hours a volunteer or actually looking for a job. And I think that's a huge thing, especially with SNAP. It's food stamps, but it's called SNAP now.
Yeah, well, and once again, we'll get into, are you concerned that when these people go to vote, when you're up for your election, that they will remember this?
Oh, absolutely. But I also know that if they were paying $1,500 to $2,000 more in taxes overnight, literally, and they saw the price of their fuel go up because of the regulations and things like that, I guarantee you they'd be a lot madder. But overall, I have to do what I think's right.
You know, this is a question we often ask our lawmakers, whether you believe basic health care is a right or a privilege. What do you think? What is it?
I think it is a privilege. The Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think that within our structure we can handle that. I think if we would truly get government out of the way and let people take care of things, I think you would see a lot of it freed up and less taxes, and they could afford things like more health care. But currently, I think there's a segment of society, a lot of people in Washington, I mean, they're openly Marxist. They think it ought to be controlled. They don't like capitalism. They don't like our system. And they think that they're going to equalize it. And it never works. In the history of this country, it has never worked.
Of the 800,000 people who you represent, 53,000 of them are on Medicaid. And yes, I think everyone can agree there is waste, there's abuse, there's fraud. But there are children in hospitals who are Medicaid.
Yeah.
There are senior
And
citizens.
they're not going to be kicked off.
In their nursing homes.
Sure.
They're working families.
Absolutely. And that's
so how can you assure they will not?
Because nothing changes. All it does is address waste, abuse, and fraud. And that is a huge component. If you can imagine somebody who illegally off the system, on the system, you see a welfare recipient who is who's not working, who should work, that's gaming the system. So now, basically, the left is raising Cain because those people are going to be out from under their control. They're not going to be. They're going to say, you know, they're going to be in a capitalist system, and they're going to need to work, and they should.
But a lot of people aren't able to, and this is what it's
That's exactly right. And the ones that
intended
aren't
to
are
do.
not going to be affected. Those people, and that again is the misdirection that's been put out. And Republicans are terrible at messaging, and the left is very, very strong at it. They use the national media, and frankly, they use bogus information because it's all about power. They don't want people out from under it. They want them under it so they can control it, and it's all about power. Politicians in Washington, by and large, in both parties, all they want to do is stay elected, and they don't want to tell the truth. I'm telling the truth, and this is the way I interpret that bill.
Here's something we learned just yesterday, too, as part of the president's budget. A grant that the city was given last year, $42 million, to connect the East and South Knoxville communities, make them walkable, to allow these communities, which are definitely home to a lot of lower income people in our community,
Sure.
to connect them to these amenities, to recreation, to better their lives. Well, we've since learned that this grant has been cut. Were you aware that this cut was coming?
Yes, and they were aware it was coming too. It was in the transportation. I forget the.
When did they find out? Because we tried to.
We voted on it months ago, and it was we were been told to cut billions from that because the money's just not there.
Did you share that with
Oh yeah, the
businesses?
city knew that. They knew when it came through, but it was it's a new deal. What happened was the new deal came through. I believe it was LBJ, and the interstates came through, and they said we're gonna bust up these thriving, primarily black communities, folks in this area, and the interstate just ran right through the middle of it. We're going to build these great housing projects, and that's just a nightmare. And again, you had a capitalist system that was working. You had a thriving community, and the government came in and wrecked it. But are we going to correct it by building walking trails and things like that? I think the answer there is education. I think we should be promoting the trades more. We should be promoting higher education more to our inner city youth. And
But to be clear, you voted
42 million.
You voted against the grant, or you voted your vote to support this.
We had to make the
ultimately
cuts.
meant.
36 trillion. It's all gonna collapse.
What do you say to that community that may have thought this might have supported me in some capacity to make my life better in some capacity?
I don't know that the government would have made their life better by making walking trails and so-called connectivity. Today, connectivity is by a computer screen, unfortunately.
Is there value though in the face-to-face and the walking and being?
Oh, sure,
part of our
but
community?
are we going to? I think your priorities, wants versus needs. Are we going to? You talked about the need for feeding people, but we're going to build walking trails instead. I just don't. I don't see that, and we had to make some serious cuts, and we monitored that, and we were very transparent from the beginning of where we were, and the money's just not there. And again, are we going to keep borrowing money? And and that's what inflation. And you talk, who's it going to hurt? Is it going to hurt the billionaires downtown? Heck no. It's going to hurt the working poor. That's what inflation's going to hurt. So again,
and some people say this budget's going to benefit through the tax breaks the rich and ultimately hurt.
Well, nothing's going to change from the last. And if it was so bad, I was surprised that the Biden administration didn't reverse it, and they didn't, and that when they had control. So I don't know that I buy that argument at all. Actually, I'm a capitalist. I believe in this system that we have, and more government interference in our lives. I just don't see that as a welcome answer.
Is there a timeline or a sense of, okay, if this is coming to pass, okay, this is when we will start seeing what the president, what
Sure.
people who supported this bill will transpire?
I think we're currently seeing it. Gas prices are down. Inflation has stopped.
Food prices are high, though.
Well,
The grocery store?
Yeah,
It's pretty crazy.
We've come through 4 years of the Biden administration, and it was jacked up like crazy in the last 4 years. So let's just be honest about that. We're not in a world war right now. We took out a nuclear threat with no American loss of lives. I have an 18-year-old daughter. You have a son, I know. We don't want to see them in that situation. We had a leader that took some criticism for it, but he did what was right, I think, in the end. He took out a nuclear threat. Nobody thought Iran having nuclear bombs. As a matter of fact, it wasn't. Even the Democrats applauded in a closed-door meeting. That hasn't really been made public about the effectiveness of this strike, and that was something that and our military preparedness is in that budget as well.
We had heard from a group of leaders, Knoxville leaders, who represent the East Knoxville community. And
Sure.
they had shared with us that they had reached out to you several months back to have a meeting to talk about their concerns that many people in their community felt left behind. What came out of that meeting, and what did you take from it, and have you since
Sure, I met
followed
with them. I
up
met with
to-
Dr. Middlebrook and several others.
Yeah.
And some of those that were critical of me, we called back, that were in the media criticized. We called back for meetings, and one of them never returned our call. So, yeah, I get it. They're wanting to have things. They don't agree with some of my decisions, and some of them, when I explained them to them, I think they understood. But I don't turn anybody down for a meeting. If they want to come by the office, they pay my salary. Yeah, I thought it was a positive meeting. I've had meetings all day today, and I would dare say a lot of my colleagues all across the country are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's nonstop, full throttle.
It's,
no doubt.
yeah.
You know,
Because you all go a long way, and everybody that sees this all the way up to Virginia is going to think I'm their congressman, and we take their calls and we deal with it.
You know, we've covered you a very long
Yes,
time,
ma'am.
since before you were even in politics.
I don't have to show an ID to cash a check anymore.
No, you don't. In 2018, though, when you were elected to Congress and leading up to that, you were a big supporter of term limits.
I'm still in.
How long is Tim Burchett set to stay
I don't
in the
know.
political game?
I don't know. As long as I feel effective, I'm not going to be one of those that's going to be a lifetime. I got a family, and it wears on you. I mean, honestly, the death threats, the security issues on your family takes more of a toll on me than it does on me. I'm walking across the street, and this bunch that anti-Semitic group, frankly, hollered at me they were going to kill my wife and my daughter in my home, and I get that that kind of thing pretty regular, and that wears on my family, and then that wears on me. I can take it. I'm good with it. It's part of the job.